Keith Gunther popping into the green room. So we're going to bring up Coach. And Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Sure. I'm glad to be on the show.
Coach, first off, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us. But what we like to do first and foremost with all of our coaches, we kind of like to start off with a meet the team segment. And we know with a lot of the team kind of being tied up with football, there's going to be a little bit of issues in introducing the entire team. But in what you know, what are some of the big impact players you expect to have on the team this season, as well as some younger guys that are going to be new faces for the Irish community?
And I think that's going to be a big deal. To be honest with you, I mean, we're not sure it's coming from football. It's going to be a long season for those guys. Their bodies are going to be beat up. And we've seen in the past a lot of guys, once they go for a long season, a lot of times their bodies are beat up and they don't actually come out for basketball. So we're not sure who's coming from football. In reality, I mean, I hate to be, I'm on their side. I expect them to get to the state game and win it all. So we're anticipating we won't see some of those guys for 3-4 weeks. But the younger guys that we have right now, very talented. Number one, we got Terrence Pinkey. He was our leading scorer last year as a sophomore. We have a new face that a lot of people are going to see real quick here. We got a 6'6" sophomore by the name of Jaden Payne. We have Vincent Filato, who's coming back. Last year, these guys were, Vinny was a sophomore, Terrence was a sophomore. They saw a lot of varsity time and played really well for us. Payne's going to be the big surprise. He's 6'6", 6'7" sophomore. He's long, he's athletic. He's a lefty. Gino Lucini, who's a sophomore, who's coming back, played some varsity minutes for us last year. And another surprise is going to be a gentleman by the name of Nick Bako, who's long, athletic, and talented, can shoot and get to the basket. So we got a lot of young guys, that are going to be playing a lot of varsity, but have varsity experience. So it's not like those guys are young and haven't played varsity. So if they come back and they keep working like they've been working, and then we add some of the football guys, we expect it to be a really good year.
I just wanted to add a follow-up question, because watching Terrence Pinkey play last year too, that was actually one of the players I wanted to comment on. It seemed like, at least when I got to see him, he had a motor that was legendary, that just did not stop, and he's always constantly moving, is what it seems like. Talk to me, when you're coaching players like that, how much easier it is when you kind of have those players with that high energy and high motor who, no matter what you give them, they seem to be up for the task.
Those guys are they're once in a probably a decade, 4, 5, 6 years that you get guys like that. I'll be honest with you, Terrence is going to get a basketball scholarship based, and don't get me wrong, he's talented, but his motor is second to none of any player that I've seen in the area. We compare him to a guy by the name that played for me back in like 07, 06, DeAndre Brown, who had the same type of motor, end up inevitably playing at Cleveland State. So, when your best player has a motor like that, everybody else doesn't have a choice but to follow suit. And that's what you want out of your leader. You want him to be the hardest worker. You want him to have a motor like nobody else has. And then basically everybody else follows suit. And inevitably what happens, you become a really good basketball team.
Coach, one of the things that we always talk about with Ursuline is the schedule you guys put together. No matter what the sport is, it's always second to none. Talk about the schedule you guys have this year and how you think it'll prepare you for the tournament.
Well, I think it'll prepare us. Not only, usually we play out of town. We got Massillon, we got Central, but locally, we're trying to get that kind of our strong SVC back. We got Boardman on the schedule. We got Austintown Fitch on the schedule. We got Cheney on the schedule. So we're just not talking about a strong schedule. Locally, we have Harding on the schedule. We went against them in the summer, and Harding's going to be back. Of course, Cheney's always going to be one of the best teams in the area. Boardman, if you look at how they've played the last 3 or 4 years, have been one of the top basketball teams in the area. So now, even though we're Division II, we're going to play some ones. We're going to play higher level basketball, and hopefully that gets us prepped. And we got to go to Massillon, Washington. We all know how difficult of a task that is. And so our schedules, once again, it's tough, and it always prepares us for the tournament.
Coach, I've asked you these type of questions before about what the culture is there at Ursuline and what it means to you. And I, obviously, looking at it, I mean, through years of success, through coaching too. But and just everyone that you've been able to have an opportunity to see and coach for, what is the biggest thing you've learned about yourself as a coach throughout all this time?
Well, I mean, and I did an interview last week. Here's the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is you want to coach to win, but you really want to coach to impact young men. So when they leave, you and go out into the real world, that, I'm 20 years into this, 23 years into coaching now. You want to see the impact that you have on them outside of basketball. I mean, sports are great. Sports are wonderful, but you want to make sure that you had an impact that changes lives for when they graduate, they go on to college, and then you see them come back, and then every once in a while, you get that guy that tells you, Coach, I mean, you've impacted my life. You've instilled some things into me that, that made me to be a successful person after they get out of basketball. Don't get me wrong. I love winning basketball games more than any other coach in the world, but the reality of it is that it's not always about, winning and losing. It's also about how you're impacting young men.
Coach, we see a lot of former players or former people on your coaching staff that, nod to you after they go and they succeed in their own endeavors. How proud does that make you as a coach when you see someone that you've either coached or you've coached with succeed in life, and then, point to their time with your program as a reason for their success?
And you know what? That's funny you say that, because I'm successful because of Roy sitting back at Newton Falls. Most people don't realize I was an assistant with Roy for like 6 or 7 years before I actually became a varsity coach, a varsity full-time coach myself. So his success inherently transferred over to me. And now, fortunately for me, I've had some guys that were on my staff that are being successful in their own programs. Marlon McGaughy was on my staff. Andre Brown was on my staff. Josh Upshire was on my staff. Kerry Palermo was on my staff. And if you look around, the great thing is, obviously, some of that success is that we've had at Ursuline has transferred to those guys. Look at what they've done at Cheney. Coach Palermo wins the district last year at Mooney. Coach Upshire had a great season a couple years ago. So, yeah, does it make me feel good? It makes me feel great. Now, don't get it twisted. I don't want to ever lose to those guys when I'm coaching up against them. But when they're not coaching against me, I want to see those guys win every game that they play. And if you look around what some of these guys have done, they've had some great success the last couple of years.
I got to agree with you on that, Coach. And talking about more of the X's and O's on the basketball court, I know one of the biggest things you've always said to me and to a lot of people is, no matter what the team's doing on the floor, whether you're up, whether you're down, it's always defense mentality. And they are never to stop playing defense. When did this kind of mentality and when did this kind of idea for being a defensive-minded coach start with you? Did it start with Sembach, or did other influences along the way kind of cater to that?
It actually happened when I was playing at Ashland University. I played for a guy by the name of Roger Lyons. I came from high school getting about 27, 28 a game and thought that offense was the way to win. And I got to Ashland my freshman year and, averaged like 6.7 points a game. And we were very successful my freshman year, based primarily on because we were playing great defense and locking teams up, and it changed my whole mentality on how to play the game and how to be effective in the game. And then from there, me and Roy became good friends, and I inevitably was the guy who kind of instilled the way we played defense when I was there at Newton Falls. And now it's transferred to, what we do at Ursuline, and it's the number one thing. If, my thing is, I tell everybody all the time, I'd rather win 1-0 rather than 99, rather 100-99, because when you win 1-0, the other team really just thinks they can't score. So it's a mentality. And when you win 100-99, the other team's thinking, man, we just needed one more basket. So that's always been my focus. It's always been my mentality. And the funny thing is, we were talking about that with our young guys the other day. I told our staff, I looked down at them, I go, these guys are hungry. They play the game the right way. They're diving for loose balls. They're physical on defense, and they're tough. The one thing I'll say, the years that we've had success, and this isn't a knock on anything else, a lot of your guys have to be basketball first guys. With that being said, you need some physical, nasty, tough, hungry football players to go along with that. And probably 70% of our varsity guys right now are basketball first guys, because here's the thing. The guys out on football, I mean, they're not going to get to you till, especially at Ursuline, most years, they're not going to get to you till, early December. And by the time they're actually in basketball shape, it's going to be probably mid-January. So, it's nice to have that core group and then add some mean, tough, physical football players to go along with that. And that's why I think this year should be a successful year.
The other thing that everyone knows about your coaching style is that you have a set standard and expectation, and it is unwavering. Your players have to meet it, or there's no other option. How important is kind of the discipline and the respect for the game to you and your program, and what you try to instill to these guys?
It's major. If you and here's the thing, we were discussing some things the other day, and I heard a grumbling of a freshman and a sophomore, and they said, "Man, I'm not sure if I'm coming out for basketball because it's too tough." And I thought, I will never ever change. That's what I want my program to be. I want people to understand that this is not going to be like a walk in the park. This is going to be, yep, our basketball program's tough. But the one thing we tell our kids, life is tough. So we want to make sure when you come into practice that it's physically tough, it's mentally tough. And then once you're done with your career here, you look back on your time and you say, you know what, my practices with Ursuline were really tough. The discipline was tough. And when you walk out the doors here, you become a tough young man, and you become a disciplined young man when you're an adult.
You've been so heavily involved in the game, from playing to assistant coaching to head coaching. Through all that experience and all that you have learned, I want to know, what would Coach Gunther tell Keith Gunther, the player?
The player, and it's funny you say that, because I got a little Keith Gunther coming up soon. So I would tell myself, because I played high school, I played collegiately, and I would tell myself, don't be afraid to put in more work than what I put in when I was in high school and college, because inevitably it's really not rocket science. If you put in the work, you put in the time, it pays off. That's all there is to it. If you don't put in the work and you don't put in the time, you're usually not going to be successful. If I had to do it all again, and I'll be honest with you, I put in a lot of time, but I didn't put in as much as I wish if I had to do it all over again, that I could. I mean, we watch kids nowadays, they'll spend 6 hours on Xbox and 1 to 2 hours on basketball, when it really should be the other way around. You should be putting in, 4 to 4 hours basketball and a couple hours on Xbox. And there's time. The guys that were great for us were guys who got up in the morning before school, shot at noon when they had an opportunity at lunch, practiced with us, then had a workout after. Those are the guys that become great. And I was a good basketball player, but I didn't put in that kind of time. And if I had to do it all over again, because you don't get time back, I would put in more time than I did. And as good as I was, I think I could have been at another level. So that's what I would tell the Keith Gunther. And that's what I tell my son, Jay, who's coming up now. Put in more time in basketball and education than you do on that Xbox. So,
Coach, me and Ty could talk to you forever. I mean, we're loving this conversation, but we don't want to keep you too long. Before we let you go, I do want to give you a chance to highlight your staff and the people that kind of assist you, and the people that really, this Ursuline program would not be where it is without.
So right now, we got a couple new guys, but right now I got George Williams, who's my varsity assistant. I got Rob Malkovich, who's my two. So right now we have two main guys that are with me. They've been with me for the last 4 or 5 years. They've been through the highs and the lows. George Williams actually played for me back when DeAndre Brown played, from like 06 to 09. And George was a great player. He's been my JV coach for the last probably 7 or 8 years, and Rob's been with me, Malkovich, the last 4 or 5 years. Those are my two go-to guys that have been with me. They understand how I am. They understand what I feel like it takes to win, and they're on the same page with me. So those guys have been phenomenal. And here's the reality of life. If you think you can do it all yourself, you never can. You're never going to be successful. You have to have guys that are on the same page with you, guys that understand your goals, guys that understand your dreams, and also guys that understand it's not just about basketball, it's about some life skills for our kids also. So I've been very fortunate to have that the last couple of years. And, we just got to continue to grow as a staff, but really we just need to continue to grow our kids and get them to understand, what it's going to take to be successful. The one thing that we're going to talk about that's going to be our focal point of our program this year is going to be crazy faith. That's going to be our motto this year. You got to have faith in what you're doing, and you got to have belief in that you're going to be successful. So we're going about crazy faith this year, and we're going to try and make a significant impact on basketball in this area coming for the 2021-22 season.
Coach, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us here on Running Point, and we look forward to the constant coverage of the Ursuline boys basketball team here on the network. And I know with any luck, we'll be talking to you again real soon.
All right. I love it. Love being on the show. Anytime you guys want to connect, just text me and you can get me on anytime you want.
No problem, Coach. Thank you for your time.
All right. Have a great day, guys.